All right. Welcome back to another Ohio State test standard review. Today we are looking at standard 8.EE.2. This has to do more with finding solutions to square roots and exponents and lovely things like that. So let's hop right in. Question 1. An equation is given. A squared equals 36. What is a solution to this equation? So, first off, let's talk about a squared. Okay? Any number that's raised to a second power, you can get rid of the power by taking what's called the square root. Okay? For example, the square root of 36. Okay? And what a square root represents is finding a number that you can multiply by itself to get the number in the square root. For example, the square root of 4 is 2, because 2 times 2 equals 4. Now, important thing to know. Every number except 0 has 2 square roots. It has a positive root and it has a negative root. Okay? So the square root of 4 has 2 roots. It is 2 and negative 2. Because while 2 times 2 is 4, negative 2 times negative 2 would also be 4, as you can test in your calculator. So the negative root will always be the same as the positive root. It's just negative. Okay? So, in our first question, the equation is given a squared equals 36. What is the solution to this equation? So here's how you're going to do this on the calculator. Okay? You're going to clear it out. You're going to hit second and the x squared button right here. And if you are on this calculator, TI-30XS, it'll bring up this. If you're on one of my TI-30s, you'll get something on your screen that looks like this. And you're going to type in 36. Close the parentheses, 36, and hit enter. And it tells you it is 6. Now, the calculator will only tell you the positive root. So it will tell you it's 6. But it's also negative 6. But this question in particular only asks you what is a solution, right? What is a solution? So it's only asking you for one solution. So you can either put 6 or negative 6, whichever one you want to put. I put 6 because 6 is just easier, right? I don't want to deal with negative numbers unless I have to. Question 2, an equation is shown. X squared equals 16. Select all of the solutions to the equation. Select all. We've talked about this in other videos. But select all means there's more than likely more than one answer. To the point where if I was a gambling man, I would say that there is more than one answer. In this case, it's already checked off for you what those two answers are. Because if you take the square root of 16, you go back into your calculator, you go second square root, put in 16, and you will get 4, because 4 times 4 is 16. So you would check off 4. And also, negative 4 times negative 4 is also 16. So you would check off that one as well. One thing to note, you cannot have a square root of a negative number, at least not in this level of math. Later in your math career, when you get to Algebra 2 and all that fun stuff, you'll get to imaginary numbers and that square root of negative numbers. For the purposes of right now, you cannot take the square root of a negative number. Question 3, an expression is shown. We have a new symbol. This is a square root symbol that has a little 3 in it. We call this a cube root. So what a cube root is, if a square root is what you have to multiply by itself to get that number. A cube root is what you have to multiply by itself 3 times to get that number. So first I'm going to show you how to put it in the calculator so that we can get the answer, and then I can show you how it works. Clear it out. So here's how you do a cube root. First off, whatever the little number is in the radical symbol, that's called the radical symbol. This symbol is a radical. Whatever the little number right here is, you're going to hit that first, 3. Then you're going to hit second, and you're going to hit this little button that looks like the exponent button. And if you do that, either on this calculator, you can see how it's doing a cube root. If you're using one of the TI-30s in my class, your calculator will look something like that. And you put in a number. What is the cube root of 27? Cube root of 27 is 3. Okay? Because 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Or 3 cubed is 27. What roots are doing exponents in reverse. Now, important thing to note. Every number only has 1 cube root. Why? Because if you were to say the cube root of 27 would be -3, you would have -3 times -3 times -3. -3 times -3 would make +9 times -3. +9 times -3 would be -27, which, doesn't match 27. So each number only has 1 cube root. So we know the cube root is 3, but the one thing we have to remember, we have this +10 tacked on. You can't forget about the +10. What's 3 plus 10? 3 plus 10 is 13. So you put in 13. And you call it a day. All right. So, now we're going to step it up a notch. 2 equations are shown where a is greater than 0. Important, meaning that a cannot be negative. They have to note this because we're working with both a square and a cube. Meaning that while you can have negative roots of a square, that doesn't work with cube roots. That would throw off your cube root. So they have to note that a is greater than 0. A cannot be negative. You will only be working with the positive root of a. So a squared equals 1 over 64. So if a squared equals 1 over 64, we're going to take the square root of the whole thing. So let's do that. So we're going to do second square root of our fraction 1 over 64. Note that if you're on one of my calculators, you are using the fraction button, which looks like ABC, kind of like that, instead of the N over D button on this calculator. Unfortunately, I cannot find an online version of my calculator that I use, so I have to use this. You're just going to hit enter. It's going to tell you that's the square root of that is 1 over 8. Okay, so now it says the cube root, b to the third is equal to a. Okay, so if a is 1/8, right, that means b to the third is equal to 1 over 8. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the cube root of both sides. Remember, if you're using anything other than the square root, you have to put the little number in your radical symbol. So the cube root will cancel out the exponent of 3, leaving you with b. And then you just have to find the cube root of 1 over 8, which is 1/2. So that leaves you with b equals 1/2. which you just put in your answer box, b equals 1/2. All right, next question. The equation is given x to the third is equal to 27. So to do this, again, we're going to end up doing a cube root. A square root is not good enough to get rid of this because your exponent is 3. This has to be a cube root. You have to do a root equal to whatever your exponent is. Okay? So this cube root will cancel out your exponent of 3, so you're left with x equals the cube root of 27, which we've already done, which is 3. So your value of x is 3. And that's it. All right. So that is your review on roots, cube roots, things like that. We'll end up covering a little bit more in a different standard where we're talking about estimating square roots and things like that. But until then, thanks for watching, and good luck on the OST.